New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast, and I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Guided selling from RingDNA makes your entire sales team more effective by revealing exactly what reps should do and when to do it. Guided selling works by transforming sales data into a curated list of prioritized sales actions. So when reps start their day, they'll never again wonder which prospects and accounts or hot inbound leads to reach out to next. Guided selling even shifts reps' priority in response to real-time buying signals. Finally, even new reps can sell like seasoned ones. Let RingDNA be your guide to success. Learn more at ringdna.com/guided selling. That's ringdna.com/guided selling. It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 689 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. I have a fun show lined up for you today. Joining me as my guest is Jeffrey Shaw. Jeffrey's a business coach, keynote speaker. He's the host of the Creative Warriors podcast and author of a book titled Lingo. Discover your ideal customer's secret language and make your business irresistible. And today we're going to be talking about the importance to sellers of learning and speaking the language of your customers. In other words, their lingo. So among the topics Jeffrey and I will be diving into include this whole idea of what a lingo is. What is the secret language? And how does it represent the value system or the behavior of your customers? And how does it enable learning their lingo? How does learning their lingo enable you to create a bond of community with your buyer? We'll also talk about why 99% of businesses are built backwards, meaning that they try to fit customers into the business instead of trying to understand the language of the buyers that they serve and building their business to align with that. And we'll also talk about this idea of sales as a metaphor for change. And Jeffrey has a great term we're going to get into. He talks about sales being about moving people from confusion to transformation. And I think that's a great description. So we'll get into that and much, much more. Now, before I talk with Jeffrey, I just want to spend a minute talking to you about the Sales House. I've been talking about this a lot recently in the podcast, and many of you have come and joined our community. We really appreciate that. The Sales House is, for those of you who haven't heard, is the all-in-one growth accelerator for B2B sellers. Now, I created the Sales House for one reason, and that's to help you learn how to close more deals, to make you look like a sales genius, to be the sales all-star for your team. So we all know the world of selling and buying is rapidly changing, and the Sales House will give you the confidence you need to take on any change and turn it into an opportunity to succeed by giving you the knowledge, the wisdom, and the advice you need to become the very best version of you. Now, we do this with multiple coaching and mentoring calls during the week where you get unlimited access to me. You get access to a growing library of micro-learning courses to help you learn and master the essential art and science of selling, as well as access to a roster of world-class experts that come into the Sales House and share their expertise in our weekly live workshops. And as well, you receive the ongoing support from people just like you, people in the trenches, people out selling every day, people want to help you and who can be a true lifeline for you. All that in the Sales House community. So imagine what your life would be when you don't have to guess what to do next. So come invest a few minutes a day in the Sales House. Visit thesaleshouse.com/join. That is thesaleshouse.com/join. All right, here we go. Jeffrey Shaw, welcome to the show.
Hey, Andy, I'm glad to be here with you.
Pleasure to have you. So you're joining us from where today?
From Miami, Florida.
Miami, Florida.
Yeah.
In the summertime.
Sunny and beautiful, and I got incredible ocean views, so no complaints.
And you're a refugee from New York City.
A refuge, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, an escapee. Like a lot of people. I meet so many New Yorkers that did the same thing I did. I just came down. It was supposed to be a 3-month stint 3 years ago just to get away from the New York winters, and here I am. I'm still here. But that's part of the advantage of realizing you've been an entrepreneur your whole life, and that you built a life that was location independent. After 3 months of being here and falling in love with it, I realized I don't have to go back. So
yes, I've been working for myself since my company since 2000. The same thing. I love the term. Everybody talks digital nomads these days, but location independent. I can do mine from anywhere, and I do.
Exactly. That's a beautiful thing.
It is. It's funny. Friends joke, other people sort of in consulting and so on that travel a fair amount. They always give me a hard time because I travel to more interesting places than they do because I'm not as dependent on work. But let's jump into it. We're going to talk about your book, Lingo, Discover Your Ideal Customer's Secret Language and Make Your Business Irresistible. So what is a secret language? And I know the books are written from a marketing perspective, but this is really, to me, it was really fascinating about a sales perspective on this because we have largely a sales audience. So what is a secret language? Yeah,
well, I'm glad you said that about sales because I've yet to do the audio version of the book, and I've been asked a lot. And part of the reason why I've held off on doing, I don't know, I may wind up being a 1-year anniversary of the book before I actually do the audio, because once the book was out, then I did 60 podcast interviews in 3 months, and I do about 10 a month. So I've done about 100 interviews at this point, and I find so much more in the content that I wrote that when I do an audiobook, I want to actually have it be an expanded version of it. And one of the things I'm most definitely going to include is the lingo of sales, right? Because really it's a book written, it tended to be a marketing and branding book. But what I've kind of unfolded is that the idea of lingo. So let's start with that. As you said, what is secret language? The terms secret language and lingo are sort of interchangeable for me, in that lingo by definition is, it's a jargon, right? You have a technology lingo, what have you. But I look at lingo almost as the secret language. In so many ways, the lingo, to speak someone's lingo is to speak to their essence, their value system, right? Which creates a bond of community. If you look at historically, lingos have made communities. Like communities, teenagers are a community, right? They have their own lingo.
Sure.
Their industries have a lingo. And really what lingo accomplishes is bonding people together as a community. And this to me is my strategy around marketing and branding for businesses, is that when you speak the lingo of your ideal customer and only their lingo, you form a community of where they feel like, wow, you're like a part of their clan, you're part of their community, to this essence that you get one another. So the secret language.
Well, I mean, just to break that down though, is a little bit is before you form a community, you have to have a relationship between individuals. So the secret language, the lingo, is how two people bond initially, right? I mean, and it sets the formation for more people to bond in a common lingo. But I mean, to me, one of the powers of what you were talking about was that even in a brand, we start with building a relationship with one customer. Yeah. Right. And that relationship that's a way that you demonstrate empathy for someone, you connect at a certain human level that might not be possible otherwise. Yeah.
And you just said the key word is empathy. And it is really taking the time to understand with empathy the value system, the essence, the lifestyle, the behavior of your ideal customer so that you can learn to speak their lingo. The reason people have asked, like, why is this book relevant now and why is it important now? I came to realize that probably 99.9% of businesses are built backwards, right? Businesses are built on ideas. Innovation is built on ideas, and that's a good thing. The problem is, from a marketing and success perspective, is that people create a business based on an idea, and then they run around for years trying to fit customers into that business. Where the right way to build a business with empathy and understanding their lingo is to really take the time to understand the lingo of the people you want to serve and build a business aligned with that lingo.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my example, and I share in the book, and I won't go to the whole full story, but to summarize the story as I tell it in the book. So when I started out as a portrait photographer, I returned to my hometown, which is a small country town in upstate New York. I realized real quickly that I was never going to succeed there because although it was my hometown, I didn't think, act, or have the same values as the people in this town.
Mm-hmm.
What I realized, I was speaking the wrong lingo because I was promoting portrait photography as a long-term investment. And I realized you can't sell that value to people that are struggling to whether they're going to make their mortgage or rent that month.
Exactly.
Right. So I needed to find the people that shared that value system so that I could learn we could speak one another's lingo. But I also knew I had a lot to learn to speak their lingo. Well, ultimately, my ideal customer for my photography business was going to be a very affluent clientele, those that had disposable income.
Sure.
The problem was I didn't know their lingo. And that's where the concepts of this book came from. Like I took it upon myself to really study the value system of the people I wanted to serve, what their expectations were, what they experienced in the brands they were already purchasing. So I studied high-end brands so that I could understand the psychodemographic or the psychographic of the customer, not so much the brand.
Right.
But I wanted to understand what made people tick that chose high-end brands if I was going to position my business as a high-end brand.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Yeah. That to me is speaking the lingo. It's like, but like I said, the problem is people don't take the time to understand the lingo before they go into business.
Well, and so one of the things that you talk about in the book is that this being able to speak someone's lingo is a way to minimize the impact of price and competition. Mm-hmm. And so as an advantage for a brand, and this is where I was sort of really thinking it from a sales perspective, right? Because, we deal with this on a one-on-one level with customers all the time, is you might, based on what you've researched, so how does that work?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the silver bullet for a salesperson.
Right. So, here's how I've learned to reframe sales. And first of all, I say is I never struggled, which a lot of people do, but I never struggled with charging what I was worth or what I felt what I was producing was worth. Mm-hmm. I've always been a very high-end photographer. I was on the coaching side, I'm kind of on the higher end as well. I don't have a lot of those blocks a lot of people have about charging what you're worth. But I will say that, like a lot of us, the idea of sales can be problematic in our own psyche. Mm-hmm. So one way that I learned to reframe how I felt about sales, and I think this is a cornerstone, is I realized it's actually not about selling anybody anything. It's actually about moving people, right? And yes, as a photographer, I had an advantage of moving people emotionally. But the big thing was, and I had to learn this from building my coaching practice, is that I had to move people from a point of indecision to a point of decision. Or I had to move people from seeing their problem to investing in the solution. Or move people from confusion to transformation. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I realized that sales comes down to simply moving people. And yes, in a marketing branding perspective, often that means about emotionally moving people so that you can move them from wherever they are to where you believe they can be better served. Mm-hmm. Right? So from that perspective...
Or where they want to be.
Or they want to be. Right. Exactly. Although, I guess there's something to be said for that too, right? I mean, if you don't agree that's where they need to be, then I don't know that I could move somebody there or sell them.
Yeah, well, they're not a prospect for you.
Then they're not a fit, right? Exactly. So ultimately, it has to be, I think, we used to joke in my photography business all the time that I'd walk into the back room and, because we were in a very, very high service business, like a lot of sales are, but yet I would walk in the back room and I'd say they're going to get what I give them. Right. Mm. But there was some truth to that, because I didn't really listen. I talk about this in my book, Lingo, the difference between one's acknowledged need and their deeper need. Right. The way to really move people is to cater to what they don't know to ask for, but would serve them best. Sure. Most people only know to ask for their acknowledged need. I need this. But as the expert in your field and as the salesperson in your industry, you likely know what they really need that they don't even know that they need. And when you can, that to me is speaking someone's lingo, because when you can speak to that, you move people in such a way and build such a high level of trust, they will pay a premium price, and you have formed a much deeper relationship.
Yeah, I mean, that really boils down to this idea about having insights into what people's requirements might be that they're not aware of necessarily based on your experience about something they could achieve or accomplish that they weren't aware of. And it sort of smacks a little bit, if you've ever read the book The Challenger Sale, is same thing as, you change the paradigm of what the customer thinks they're buying.
Yeah.
You ask them something about their business that they really should know, but they don't. And then that sort of sparks that insight on the part of the buyers, like, oh, well, this person's kind of sharp. They know something, right? They've got some value that I need. So you talk about how, though, the secret language, and this was interesting for me, is sort of replacing avatars and the marketing personas that exist. And interested, to hear a little bit about that from you, because I think that the one thing that I see in sales, as I see as a problem, not everybody sees it as a problem, but I do, is that people become so wedded to this idea of the persona that, they'll send their marketing teams will arm their sales teams with, really heavily scripted questions based on, hey, this person meets these criteria for our persona. And it never really gets that real connection going, right? Because they're selling to the persona, not to the person.
Exactly.
So, to me, that's problematic, because we end up getting these unsatisfactory, interchanges between stilted buyers and stilted customers. So, so how does Lingo sort of address that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're spot on, and it's one of the I refer to Lingo as the evolution of buyer personas and avatars, because it's okay that they exist and it's been good enough up to this point. But as the old adage says, what got us here isn't going to get us where we want to go. Mm-hmm. So buyer personas and avatars have been a step in the right direction from not knowing anything about our customers in years past, because people were throwing money at us with ease.
Right.
And then we started to develop, we need to know our customers a little bit better, and hey, let's throw some tracking pixels on there, and we'll know their behavior. But it's not going to go far enough. I mean, I see a much deeper level of personalization being required, or I should say even individualization coming from from consumers.
Right.
And, Andy, I think part of this is going to be initiated by artificial intelligence and the fact that so many companies are using cookies and tracking pixels. The fact of the matter is, I've been in business long enough to know that every time something goes in one direction, the opposite becomes true. So, right? So as the world becomes more automated, more artificial intelligence, more behavior-based marketing, consumers are innately going to test that and crave the opposite, which is, well, but do you really know me? Mm-hmm. Not just my persona, right? Not just this generalization, but do you really know me?
Yeah.
Right? And that's why...
100% agreement. I mean, I think that and Jeffrey Colvin wrote about this in his book, Humans Are Underrated, as we see this rush of automation, AI, machine learning, that, people are going to start craving the human. Exactly. And this is really this ability to connect with another person, right, really becomes valuable.
Yeah, and to feel like the business that you're doing business with really gets you. And and this is possible, by the way, and I know that you know this too, this is possible for pretty big companies. I think some bigger companies may struggle with how to bring that level of individualization and personalization to their businesses. But again, entrepreneurs, small businesses might be an advantage that can maybe pivot on this idea a little quicker, but big companies are going to figure it out as well. And it's also true. I mean, with really good brand messaging, you can bring a whole lot of voice and personality, even through your online marketing. Mm-hmm. That makes the company feel like. But again, it takes that initial research. The company has to have done the research for the consumer to feel like this business, even if it's an online presence, gets my values, gets my voice, gets my style.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think I see sort of stages we have to pass through, where right now we're dealing with the sort of fiction of personalization at scale, and that's going to pass through. I think before it gets even to the individualization, as you talk about, it has to go through this filter I call humanization, where people have to feel that they're actually talking to a person.
Yeah.
that someone has taken the time to look at them individually, and then the net result of that could be the individualization. I think that's.
I like your thought process in a lot, because it was something I struggle with in writing Lingo, was trying to, people are like, well, how can I possibly speak the secret language, the lingo of every one of my individual customers? I was like, well, but as in our language, there's languages and then there are accents, right?
Or dialects even.
In dialects, exactly. Right. It's broken down. So the lingo builds the community, and then you may cater more individually to the individuals through a dialect or through an accent, a little extra touch. So I'll give you a kind of a quirky example, but it's so fresh in my mind because I'm just returning from a few-day trip. It was supposed to be an overnight trip, but due to some storms, it wound up being a 3-day fiasco.
Wow, sounds like Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of, I was beginning to feel that way with as many planes that I was stranded on. But I had a dog walker. I have 2 little dogs. I had hired a relatively new dog walker who was inundating me with, my dogs are walked 4 times a day, inundating me with photographs of their every little move that the dog made, which are all blowing up my phone because she's using WhatsApp, and those would download immediately to the phone. And I was pushing back and saying, I just need 1-2 pictures. That's enough. And then there were a lot of messages about the well-being of the dogs, what was going on with them. And, by the time I got home, I was so frustrated, and I expressed to her, it's like, look, I appreciate what you're trying to do here. I said, but I'm away because I'm busy and I'm working and I want to concentrate on my work. I said, this was way too much information. And she addressed the problem by saying, well, I take my work so seriously. I was trying to offer exceptional service. And that was the key. And the business coach in me never shuts off. So I was like, well, look, if I can offer you some advice, it's like, you offered me the service that you believe is exceptional, but wasn't for me.
Right.
So you need to kind of fine tune what exceptional, because exceptional service is that I have such trust in you that if I don't hear from you, all is good. Right. And that's the mistake a lot of businesses make, I think, is that they develop based on avatars and buyer personas, what they believe is going to be of exceptional service or sales to the customer. But they're not actually engaged with the customer, or even sometimes the way that community breaks down by individuals as to what they really need. So, hey, I'm sure this dog walker works with some other busy people who actually like that level of engagement, right? But a very simple questionnaire would have addressed that issue if she had asked me in the beginning, how much do you want to hear from me? How many photographs satisfy you? It's that level of individualization would have made a big difference.
Yeah, which then raises the question, which I don't think we have time to completely get into today, is, then how do you scale that level of individualization, right? I think that really becomes the challenge.
Yeah.
Because
although, gosh, today's world of CRMs, big or small business, I mean, gosh, what
but it takes a certain amount of time. I mean, for her to say, look, I'm going to survey every one of my dog walker customers, there could be a time where that she doesn't have the time to do that.
Yeah.
And thus, in her mind, saying, look, I need to establish a baseline of what I consider exceptional service, which, you could take even the example that you gave with your dog walker. I would say probably 80% of her clients would probably go over the top about that, right? Wow, she's going above and beyond. You have a different lingo and different expectations. So for you, that was different. So I think the challenge becomes, how do you individualize that in a way that enables you to do the rest of your work, right? I mean, that is scalable.
I don't think it's as hard. Again, I think big companies, small companies can take on this challenge. I'll peel back the curtain here a little bit. You and I have come together on this podcast through a company that sets up podcast interviews. Okay. And, they have their processes, but I knew I was doing a considerable volume of in order to launch the book, I was doing a huge volume of interviews, 60 in 3 months and then 10 a month every thereafter. As much as I'd love to listen to every show that I'm going to be on, but I knew by volume, it just purely wasn't going to be possible. I'm also running my own podcast and my business. So I created for them a Lingo briefing sheet. So I created for them questions that I want them to either ask the host or just by doing their own research, things that I want them to tell me so I get a feel of the lingo of your show before I come on. So I asked them questions like, I think the most important question to me is, how would I dress for that show? If I were visiting that show in person, how would I dress? Right? Because if they tell me it's a jacket and tie type of show, I have a sense of my presence. If they tell me it's like a t-shirt and jeans show, then that gives me a sense of how I need to show up. I ask them on a scale of 1 to 5, how clean is the language? How profane is the language? Right? Because some shows, hey, you can drop F-bombs, and that's part of their character. That's the lingo of the show. I'm capable of it. But I want to know the lingo. I'm not going to do it inappropriately because it's not about it being my brand on that show. I want to stay in the lingo of the show.
Right.
I ask things like, how much does the host and the guest talk over one another? So I just, with a simple form, provided them a briefing sheet that they're able to fill out. And I can look at this sheet and show up on your show and the hundreds of shows I've been on and get a strong sense of how I need to show up to speak the lingo of that show. So I think every business can do this with just some inquiry, even as a larger business, lead magnets and things like that. You can tell a lot by somebody. If you give people a choice of 2, 3 lead magnets, you can tell a lot about somebody by what they choose. Right? So that could become a way of developing. Well, this is the lingo. Time efficiency is the lingo of this customer because they chose this.
Right.
So I think with some automation, I think we can go much deeper in realizing people's essence than we realize.
Yeah, my point was that it still takes time and
takes systems. Yeah,
and it takes systems.
Yes.
But if you're a sales professional and you're dealing with 100 accounts, let's say. It's going to take systems. It's going to take technology. It may still, I think we see is there's going to be this tendency to default to, like I said, sort of the mass personalization, which I think we all acknowledge just isn't working, right?
Yeah. But to your point, I mean, you know sales, and one thing is that it all comes down to conversion, right? If you start seeing a higher conversion rate because of that added level of individualization, that will inspire you to do more of it.
Sure.
Right? If you find success through knowing more about people, those small details about them, if you can find out more about them and you deliver on that, and that increases your conversion rate in sales, it becomes a no-brainer. You know what path you're going to follow.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's not that it's impossible, right? Because Harvey Mackay, if you've read any of Harvey's books, Swimming with Sharks, he talks about in that book, and had put this use in his business years and years ago. And they still use this. They try to ask or get answers to 66 different questions about their customers. Which is a level of depth that most people think is unimaginable. But when you think about when you have that data, and I implemented this in my own selling after I'd read the book. I wasn't going 66 deep, but I was going deeper. Yeah, when you have that amount of information about one particular client, then your conversion rate's going to go up fairly substantially.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things I do with my coaching clients. I do a practice I call a brand blend. So I help them identify kind of their own brand essence by identifying 2 well-known brands that if you were to mash them together as a whole, it would represent the essence of your business. And the reason that's really useful is that particularly it's really useful for a company with various teams, various employees, because you can actually create a terminology that mashes those brands together in a way that the whole team knows what it means, right? It creates a unity in the team that I think is really important. So that you're almost creating your own internal lingo. So it gets everybody on the same page to understand, that's the lingo of our customer. The lingo of our customer is, if you were to imagine, I don't know, one of my coaching clients uses a lingo called Prapple, which is Apple and Prada smashed together because they're an innovative company, but high end. So, internally they talk about Prapple as if it's a real thing, like it's a word, but it gives everybody in the team an essence of who their ideal customer is, what their ideal customer is looking for. And I think you find it very grounding in a company.
Yeah, very interesting. I have to think about that. That's see how that applies to my own business.
Yeah. The reason I think it's easier if you use identifiable brands is because as new people come on, they're brands they already know. If you mash together brands that are already intuitively people know something about, it's easier for people joining the team to kind of embody that.
All right. So last question is and I think we sort of touched on it a little bit, but I just want to see if that's the case, is that you talk about how, Lingo makes sort of the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, obsolete. So tell us what you meant by that.
Yeah, I know. It's but this tends to ruffle some feathers too, because I get it. I get the 80-20 rule. I'm not going to argue the factual truth of it, because there's a actual truth of it. But I think it's as a philosophy, it's a dangerous philosophy for businesses. And I don't know that it needs to be the case. So, as you know, the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle is 80% of your income comes from 20% of your customers. Well, particularly on this for smaller businesses, what that's really saying is that 8 out of 10 customers are a waste of time. And what I found is that when you can speak the lingo of your ideal customer, you can build a business where all your customers are your most profitable customers. Mm-hmm. So you have maybe it's a 95-5 ratio, maybe it's 90-10. But I think it's the amount of time that small businesses, medium-sized, even larger businesses, the amount of time that businesses waste catering to the customers that aren't the most profitable. A lot of times the gateway to that problem is their brand messaging. Right? They're actually calling forward too broad of an audience. Mm-hmm. In the book, one of the foundational stories in Lingo I talk about is my experience at Bergdorf Goodman. And one of my favorite things to do when I'm speaking on stage is to ask how many people in the audience know Bergdorf Goodman. Mm-hmm. Very small percentage of people, if anyone, knows what Bergdorf Goodman is.
Well, they probably heard about it in a movie.
Maybe, but I mean, I'm always amazed at the blank stares I get. Now, Bergdorf Goodman it's an 8-story department store on 5th Avenue at 59th Street in New York City. It couldn't have a more prominent location. I've done videos of, tens of thousands of people that pass by and have no idea it's there. Yeah. And the point is it's not for everybody. Right. And nor is any business for everybody. So the idea of speaking the lingo, the secret language of your ideal customer, is so that you're creating a business that has a higher percentage rate of your ideal, most profitable customers. So you're busting out of the 80-20 rule and building a business, which I think is pretty critical today because there's so much noise in the market that look at the expenditure of time and money it takes to acquire a customer, right? You don't want 8 out of 10 of them to be a waste of your time. We need every customer to stand out and be our most profitable ones.
Yeah, interesting. Just thinking about the Pareto principle too, and we think about more and more businesses are switching to subscription models. Does it really apply in that case anyway? It's sort of a separate subject, but if you're HBO. I think probably the Pareto principle probably doesn't apply when you look about individual subscribers. Maybe it doesn't if they look at their customers as cable companies, but they've got.
But there's not a huge amount of time invested in that type of. If it's a subscription-based business model, there's not a lot of time invested that you have to protect the time wasted as much.
But increasingly there is. I mean, software now is completely a subscription business, right? It used to be big dollar amounts. You go sell the license to a company. Now those companies buy by the seat. And that's completely transformed. Now you still have probably the same distribution if you're selling to large and small companies. But, if you're only selling to large companies, you think, okay, does it really apply the same way? I don't know. Topic for another day. All right. Well,
exactly.
Jeffrey, great. Well, I appreciate the time. It's a great talking to you. So tell folks how they can find out more about you.
The best way to find out more about me is go to Jeffrey Shaw. Actually, we've created a page for your show. So jeffreyshaw.com/accelerate. Mm-hmm. That will get them to a page with some gifts on it. And actually, there's links to the book. Actually, something I'm doing a lot now is offering a kind of a quick audit of people's brand messaging on their website. So there's an option for that as well. They can fill out a quick application, sort of what we were speaking about earlier. Mm-hmm. I have people fill out a written application. Right. And then I go to their website, and that's how I can often see the gap in their own brand messaging. And it's quite a beautiful thing to see because what people intend and what they write is very different than what they're actually getting across.
Interesting. Okay.
And it kind of closes the gap. I mean, I can see the gap, but the goal is, of course, to close that gap by making sure you're speaking the lingo of your ideal customer, because what you have in your head and who you want to reach and what you think about them and what you're actually putting out in the world can be more often than not, there's a big gap in what you intend and what you're actually communicating.
All right. Excellent. Well, good. Well, again, Jeffrey, thank you.
My pleasure, Andy. Thank you for having me.
Okay, friends, that was Accelerate for this week. First of all, As always, I want to thank you for taking the time to join me. I want to thank my guest, Jeffrey Shaw. Join me again next week as we welcome Brian Wade to Accelerate. Brian is the CEO of Sigster. Now we're going to talk about how to increase your sales velocity using your email. So before you go, don't forget to check out the Sales House, the growth accelerator for B2B sellers. Visit us at thesaleshouse.com/join. Thanks again for joining me. Until next week, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. RingDNA is the leading sales enablement platform that uses AI to help scale business growth. Trusted by the top companies across the globe, RingDNA offers a suite of powerful tools for every sales role. The RingDNA dialer radically improves sales productivity and call connection rates, while guided selling helps reps know exactly what to do and when to do it. Conversation AI uses artificial intelligence to surface the most impactful coaching opportunities in real time. So, no matter where your team is working from, the RingDNA platform can help them exponentially increase call connections, opportunities, and revenue. Learn more at ringdna.com/platform. That's ringdna.com/platform.